Hi, I'm Lance DeVoe, naturalist with the City of Rochester Hills. This is Lauren Oxlade. She's our outdoor interpreter. Together we do our outdoor engagement programs, and we've been doing the Facebook Live now for 3 weeks. I think this is our third one. So today we're going to talk about Michigan snakes. So most people, I think, would be interested to know that there's 17 different kinds of snakes in Michigan, even though there's only a handful that you see very often. So we're going to show you some live snakes. We've got some pictures of snakes, of important ones. We do have one venomous snake, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then afterwards, after we're done with the Facebook Live, we're going to hang out for an hour or so. If anyone wants to come out and visit, we are in Bloomer Park, right by the stone shelter. Maria from the mayor's office is going to handle any questions that come up during this broadcast. Anything you want to add?
No.
You ready?
Yeah.
So we have some cages set up here with a handful of different snakes, and the first one that we're going to talk about is actually our most common snake, and Lauren's going to tell you a little bit more about it.
So this guy right here is an eastern garter snake. I'll put him down there. Maybe you can see him a little bit better. This one's probably a few years old. We caught this one the other day for this program over on the Paint Creek Trail. And this is probably the most common snake that you'll find here in Michigan. You can find them all over the U.S. They're a really, really common snake. They also, they don't always look like this. They have a lot of color variation. This one actually is pretty dark and pretty dull. I've found them before where along the side here they have blue, sometimes they have red. They also usually have a more defined stripe down the back too. These guys are going to eat small invertebrates. They also really like frogs and toads. You may have seen our Facebook Live video, I don't know, whenever we were at Harding a couple weeks ago, where one of the garter snakes was eating a live toad. So that was pretty cool to get on camera. You can see it flicking its tongue in and out. That's just kind of like an additional sense that they have where they're sort of tasting the air.
What color is it?
Tells them a lot of different things about what's going on around them. If you can see, I don't know if you can get close enough, but it's look at that. It's red with a black tip. But these guys are super common. You want to tell them about?
Well, I want to tell them one thing about the garter snake too is they get called garden snakes and gardener snakes and all kinds of variations of that, but it is garter with a T. And there's two other species of garter that are considered garter snakes. The ribbon snake, which same basic coloration, not as much variation in color, but has the yellow stripes, but they've got a real defined, bright, almost white line on the bottom of its lip.
And they're really long and really skinny.
Long and skinny, that's why they're called a ribbon snake. And then the other one is the butler's garter snake. Looks very similar, typically smaller than the eastern. As an adult, they would be about that size.
And they have a really thick neck, whereas the eastern garters have a more defined neck.
So, but they look very similar with the yellow stripe. All right, we're gonna talk about
little baby water snake.
So, where did this one come? Oh, Garrett caught this one.
This one was found in the cricket field here in the park, actually, which is kind of a strange place for it. Usually, you find them by water, which is how they get the name water snake. But as we know in nature, there's a lot of variables. This is a super fresh baby. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you guys about the eastern garter snake is they give birth to live babies, which is really cool.
As do the water snakes.
That's what made me think of it. Most people think that all reptiles and amphibians lay eggs, and that's not the case. We actually have quite a few species of snake here in Michigan that give birth to live babies, one of which being the water snake.
This is a very common snake in this area. Almost always found near ponds and lakes and rivers all along the Clinton River. When we kayak and canoe the river, we'll see one coiled up and sitting in the sun. Yeah, so they're excellent swimmers. Their diet consists mainly of, as you would imagine, things that you can find near water. So they'll eat fish, they'll eat frogs.
That's this year's baby. That baby was just born within probably the last 2 weeks.
Because this is quite a large snake, and even though, I mean, this is a newborn baby, this snake gets to be almost 4 feet long and is super thick. Fairly aggressive snake. We didn't talk very much about the mannerisms of some snakes. Like garter snakes are kind of fairly calm, but water snakes, if you were to encounter one and pick it up, pretty good chance
you're gonna get bit.
you're going to get bit. But they are non-venomous, so their bite is harmless, but they're a fairly aggressive snake. I'm going to show you a picture of what the adult looks like. So that's one coiled up on a log, and that's a full-grown adult. So they do have those bands that when they're not in the water and they're dry, they can look almost solidly dark brown or black.
You can see
so
the difference in
the color changes from, and this is not uncommon in some snakes where the baby doesn't look exactly like the full-grown adult. But this is a common snake, and we get lots of calls about it, wondering if, because it's found in similar habitat to our only venomous snake that we're going to talk about in a minute, the Massasauga rattlesnake. So we get a lot of calls about these snakes. In fact, I got an email yesterday. Someone wanted me to identify a snake they saw in a pond, and it was one of these guys. So harmless snake, non-venomous.
You want to show them the picture of the Massasauga?
Yeah, we can look at that. So
that's what they get confused with all the time.
this is our only, how do you want me to hold that? Is that good?
That's fine.
This is the only venomous snake in Michigan. It is a rattlesnake, so they have the telltale rattle on their tail unless it's been broken off. When they're born, they'll have a single button on their tail, and each time they shed their skin, they add another button. So
that's another live bearing snake too.
Yes, it's it looks.
They're a pretty timid snake too. They're shy.
This is a very shy snake, and it's also a snake that's found in wetlands, marshy areas, and it actually overwinters in crayfish holes, because snakes in Michigan do have to hibernate. But hard snake to find.
I've only ever found one in my life.
I saw that one. But you can hunt for them, and because of the habitat they're found in, they're not in places that people go very often, so they're not very often seen. It's not a very big snake. It's less than 3 feet.
But fat.
But yeah, they're pretty thick. But the Eastern Massasauga are our only venomous snake. Okay.
So another one that we have here is the hognose. Now this is a western hognose. We do have an eastern hognose here in Michigan, but you can't keep them in captivity because they're protected. But for teaching purposes, the western hognose fulfills all the same purposes, and this is a really, really great snake. These guys, this variation of the species you obviously can find out west, but the eastern hognose here in Michigan, they get confused also for, here, hold them down here so you can see them better. They get confused for the Massasauga as well because of their kind of fat, short body and their coloration. The eastern hognose that we have here, you can see how if you don't have a lot of experiences with snakes, you can see how easily they would be confused. These guys actually do have rear fangs because one of their favorite things to eat are actually toads. And when they grab toads, the toad's going to inflate itself to try and obviously prevent from being eaten. And they use those rear fangs to puncture the toad so that they're easier to eat. But what's nice about the western hognose is they're captive bred, and you feed them mice, so they're a lot easier to take care of. And like I mentioned, the eastern hognose is protected, so you can't have them in captivity. And they're really hard to keep in captivity anyway because they only eat toads. But this snake, when she's full grown, she'll probably be about 3 feet long or so. So she's just a sub-adult right now. We've had her for a couple years. And I don't know if you can see on her nose, that's how they get the name hognose. They have that little upturned snout, and they use that for digging in the sand. They typically like sandy areas and digging and looking for toads to eat. So that's the western hognose.
What about the defense mechanisms for the eastern hognose?
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot the coolest thing about them.
Can you show us?
No, you show us. I forgot the reason why this is my favorite kind of snake. They do these really funny things when they're under attack or when they feel threatened. They'll actually flip over on their back. And can you please do it? You do it for the preschoolers.
Yeah, when we do these snake programs for kids, I get down on the floor and roll over on my back and writhe all around, stick my tongue out, and pretend that I'm dead.
That's what they do. They stick their tongue out. They're a very dramatic snake, so I can't believe that I forgot why they're my favorite. And they rarely bite too. They do a lot of like nose bumping. They're a pretty calm snake, which makes them really great teaching animals. But yeah, they have some pretty funny mannerisms. They will actually even flare. They have a hood kind of like a cobra, but it's not as defined as a cobra. So their first line of defense is to do that and to make themselves look really big. But then if that doesn't work, then they feign death, and it's very dramatic. So they're a really cool snake.
They also come in a different color than this one. They'll instead of mottled like this, they'll oftentimes be solidly gray. So
sometimes they have a bit of an olive tint to them. So this snake also has a lot of variety, kind of like the garter snake.
So yeah, interesting snake. Not that common, but up north you can find them a little more readily. Have you ever seen one in southern Michigan?
In theory, there's a picture of me with one when I was a kid, but I've never caught one. And I spend a lot of time looking for snakes.
Because I see them.
They're also a really shy snake, and there's not a lot of them anymore, and they have a pretty specific habitat, so not a common snake.
Look at this little guy. So
this guy is so cool.
This is another baby. It's an eastern milk snake. One of my favorite snakes because they're super beautiful. This one, let me get it out.
And that's another live bearing snake.
So you can see the kind of maroon reddish bands interspersed with the light gray or almost white color, and also a characteristic in all milk snakes is that heart or triangle shaped mark on the right on the back of its head. They all have that, and in fact part of their Latin name is triangulum because of that triangle shape on the back of its head. So as Lauren said, this snake just born this year. It's a fairly large snake, although adults aren't very common, but it'll get to be over 3 feet long. They're big mouse eaters. We also get calls about this because of the banding. You can see that it has some similarities to those other snakes that we showed previously, like the Massasauga, that has more spots rather than bands, whereas the milk snake is almost always banded, although the color can vary quite a bit. And I'm going to flip them over in a minute because it's kind of neat on their stomach. It's a checkerboard of black and white.
They can come, you can see this one has blotches of red on its back. I've found them before where they're all gray with brown blotches. I've found them brown with dark brown blotches. That's another snake that has, even though the patterning is consistent, the color can vary a lot. I just caught one last weekend that was like 3 feet long.
He's calmed down quite a bit.
Yeah, it was tan with dark brown blotches.
You didn't want to use that for the program today?
I didn't think of it at the time. It bit me.
They do have backward curving teeth, especially the snakes like this one that are big mouse eaters. So once they get a hold of something, the idea is that it
only goes one way.
It only goes one way. And that's why when they do bite, if you pull your hand away, it'll cut your skin. Their teeth are razor sharp. He's calmed down quite a bit.
Good little snake.
We're going to release him probably
this weekend. He's going back to where he came from.
He's going back because
we just hung on to him for the program. Baby snakes are hard to take care of.
Some species of snakes just don't do well in captivity from a standpoint of eating. So even like the garter snake, we might keep him for a while, but we'll let him go before winter.
End of the season.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell him about the rat snake.
So this is the largest snake found in Michigan. Remember I said earlier we have 17 different species. This is a black rat snake. Believe it or not, this guy is going to get to be, if he reaches his full potential, they can be close to 8 feet long. So this I would still consider to be a baby. It's not...
He's only about a year old.
Yeah. So... large snake that also changes color as it gets older. Probably in another year or so, it's going to turn to a solid, large black snake. So
with a much lighter belly.
they are our largest snake, another big rodent eater. I had an adult for over 10 years. He's also got the checkerboard on the belly. But the idea with the patterning is that these snakes the pattern gives them a better camouflage when they're young to hopefully protect them, because a lot of things eat snakes when they're this small. So as they get older, they can protect themselves better, and they change to a different color. This is also an extremely rare snake in Michigan. Where'd this one come from?
A breeder.
You can't keep black rat snakes if you were to find one in Michigan. Other states like Oklahoma and Kansas have all kinds of black rat snakes around, but they're only found in the southwestern part of the state, and extremely rare snake in Michigan.
I don't know if I've ever found one.
I never have either.
But they're really cool. Common down south.
So, in the same family, our second largest snake, these can't be kept in captivity either. They're extremely nervous snakes. They strike at the glass. If you try them, they won't eat.
They never settle down.
But this is the blue racer. It's our second largest snake. It's related to the black rat snake, another big rodent eater, and a large snake. This snake gets to be close to 6 feet long. They actually climb trees. They're excellent climbers, and super beautiful snake.
They can have some color variation too. They can be like dark gray. They can have brown, olive, but they're not always that vibrant blue. But they can be.
And you can see that they typically have that black line going through their eye on their head.
There's a variation of the snake down south too, a black racer. It looks just like it, except it's black with a white belly.
And I actually have caught these right around here.
Yeah, I had a guy tell me he lives over on Winkler Mill and he's got him in his yard.
Oh, that's right. I remember that story. So that's the blue racer. And lastly, this is the second most common snake here in the park. We are in Bloomer Park. And when I was in school, this snake was actually called the DK snake. Now it's referred to as the brown snake or little brown snake. It is a small snake that only gets to be about 15 to 18 inches long. Most of the time when you find them, they're about a foot long.
That's another live bear.
Another live bear. I actually had one years ago that gave birth to 22 babies. So one day I had one snake, and the next there were 22 little ones in there. And they're so small because this snake is so small.
The babies are like 4 inches long.
You can, if that, they're maybe only 3 inches long, and they're especially with my fat fingers, they're hard to pick up. You're like, you don't want to squish them. So I just took them all and let them all go at the same time. But super neat snake, real mild mannered. They're hard to find, good camouflage, but usually they're under logs or bark flaps or in the leaf litter. Every now and then we'll see one crawling across the road, sunning itself. But this is the brown snake, and it's related to a handful of other small snakes that we have in Michigan. The ringneck snake, the red belly snake, and the smooth green snake. So lots of cool different snakes in Michigan. All of them are harmless, as we pointed out before, except for the Massasauga rattlesnake. It's unlikely you'll ever see. It's a shy snake anyway, but it is venomous. Anything else?
I think we covered it.
We're good?
All right.
Okay, we are going to be here for another hour or so. Mm-hmm. So if you saw the show and want to come out and see the snakes in person, maybe even touch one.
Yeah, you guys are welcome.
Come on out. Bloomer Park by the Stone Building.